장권
정동현이 역전을 만듭니다. 이천의 장면을.
Winners of the AFC Champions League 2020, Ulsan Hyundai.
You're listening to the K-League United podcast, proud partner of Football Nation Radio.
For the first time in a very long time, welcome to the K-League United Bunker. I'm your host, Ryan Walters, and we are back for another live edition of the K-League United podcast for the first time in an actual month, a full-on month it's been since we did one of these live. And I am joined by two gentlemen. Well, we're going to hit the highs and lows, gentlemen. I'm joined by Matthew Binns.
Hello.
And Dan Croydon.
Hello, how's it going?
Good. For me, overall, for me, things are good. There was this small tournament that happened, Copa America. I don't know if you guys followed it.
I did, in fact. One of the few Blackburn internationals was on it. Ben Brereton Diaz.
That's right.
Sensation of the summer, the best English striker in the world at the moment.
That's right. Yeah. Speaking of England, condolences.
Well, hey, as an Ulsan fan, I'm very used to falling at the final hurdle. But England get another chance in Qatar, just like Ulsan did. We're going to come back and win the World Cup.
There you go.
It's written. Yeah,
might even be in the same stadium.
Yeah,
it probably is, right?
three tigers on the shirt, is it? If you're doing the comparison, but yeah. No, it's. I mean, I'm glad I've had the extra day to recover, because I don't think doing this podcast yesterday would have been as fun. So yeah, it's been a long 24, 48 hours since. It's just crushing in the end, wasn't it?
I definitely would not wear my inaugural Nations League winning USA jersey for you today to rub it in. I would not have done that to you guys. I wouldn't have. But this is the 2010 shirt. Nothing significant happened that year. We didn't have a match against England or anything that day. No, I wouldn't do that to you guys. I wouldn't do it. Anyway, let's move on to a tournament that we all know and love. The one that everybody in the world had their keen eyes on, and it's the East portion of the AFC Champions League. That's right. Everybody wanted to see those Beijing youngsters go out there and see what they could offer. And Dan's joining us here on time. We thought Dan was going to be joining a little bit late, so I think we'll switch the order here. We were going to start with Jeonbuk just because we always start with Jeonbuk, but I think we'll actually go in the order of the groups here, which means that we are going to start with Ulsan. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to go group by group, and we're going to talk about what went well, what didn't, name a standout team, a standout player, and we're going to name what the K-League teams can take back to the domestic league after this international competition. But, gentlemen, before we get into any of that, let's talk about AFC Champions League in general. This is the biggest edition of the tournament to date. There are 40 teams involved total, and surprise, surprise, with that, we also saw the most goals in the group stage, 340 goals scored in the group stages this year. The previous record was 303 in 2017, which, what an addition to the tournament that was, considering how many fewer teams it had, and they had only 37 fewer goals. But overall thoughts, Dan, I'll start with you on this one. What was your overall impression of the expanded tournament? Let's say first in theory before we get into in practice.
Okay, yeah, in theory, I'm very much for it. I think it's. I think the teams from the countries that were there for the first time, they started out a bit iffy, of course, but they grew into the tournament. I think definitely the Philippine team that was in the in Ulsan's group, Kaya. They did poorly at the beginning, if we put it mildly, but yeah, they grew into the tournament, and this is what is going to happen from now on. I mean, they can only improve. The more exposure they get, the better they will get, and everyone's healthier for it in the long run, I think. So in the short run, I think with the way that it was done in the bubble format, it didn't suit those teams at all. Not hosting anybody, not having their own fans there. It's a tough way for them to start. But in the long run, the expanded format, the new countries, I think it can only be a positive, really.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I agree with it in theory, and that's why I think I specified for both of us there to start in theory. Matthew, in practice, and what we actually got in this year's edition, what were your main takeaways?
I thought it was a bit of a miss. Again, I'm all for welcoming more teams into this tournament. I think there should be more variety because it was becoming a bit stale with the same old faces. But it became a bit farcical, this whole second place goes through situation. I mean, I've never been a fan of this progression method anyway. Even when, in the Euros, we were doing best third places go through, whatever. But the best second place, along with the Chinese Super League side sending their kids, the A-League side's pulling out. And then you've got the new teams that have come through who there is a talent gap there, as Dan says. They need to be in this competition, and it's going to take a couple of seasons, couple of editions of this tournament before we start seeing them compete a bit at a higher level. But yeah, we've got these in there who are also a bit like, oh, here we are at this stage. And then you've got the teams, because the Chinese Super League sides, not Chinese Super League sides, sorry, the A-League sides, then we've got the playoff teams who would have probably gone out before the group stages and now also in this group stage. So then if you've got one of these, quote unquote, unfavored teams, it becomes your duty to thrash them because suddenly you've got your eyes on other groups because you've got to get the best second place. And Pohang actually had one of the better balanced groups, but their progression hung in the balance because they needed Jeonbuk to win in the end.
Yeah.
And in fairness, Pohang should have gone through because their group there was no real major thrashings in relative terms in their group. And finally, I couldn't work out who was facing who in the knockouts. I'm still trying to work out how Ulsan have got Kawasaki. That's like a semi-final in this competition.
Yeah, I did want to come to that. I don't know. I don't really know how they've worked that out. The two teams that got maximum points finished top of their groups. Obviously, with 8 teams going through from 5 groups, 2 first places are going to play each other. But I mean, they ranked the second place teams, the best second place teams. Why aren't the best first place teams seeded in some way? So but all right. To be honest, the second place.
You guys are jumping the gun a little bit. You're jumping the gun a little bit. We'll get there for that.
Let me go back though to the second place thing. I didn't have a real problem with that. I think it added a little bit of an extra spice to the end of the round. Quite often the first 2 teams who's going through is decided, and you get that dead rubber game at the end that really nobody wants to travel for. So I think it added something to the competition, albeit a little bit oddly.
I think, again, in theory, when we're seeing this in a more normal format, which next year is also going to be a bubble, AFC has already announced that we are going to see this again next year. I personally think that's a pretty smart decision just because let's start planning ahead. The state of the world might be better next year, but I can't see it being better enough that we're going to have teams traveling from Japan to Australia, from Singapore to Korea, and so on and so on. But I like the idea of second place not being a guarantee because I think it really puts emphasis on winning your group. And I think that we should have that emphasis on winning your group. But Matthew, like you were saying, the emphasis on thrashing other teams in this year's edition of ACL, there were 4 different teams that scored 7 or more goals. Daegu, Jeonbuk, Gamba Osaka, and Kawasaki Frontale did it twice. So yeah, we're going to see some pretty lopsided results there because of that. Again, I think as the tournament finds its feet in its current format, I think maybe we'll see a little bit less of that. I like the changes. I think it was a rough one this year, especially with the CSL side sending their kids. I mean, talk about feet to the fire. You got like an 18-year-old defender with Cecina come running at him. Good luck, kid. Have fun with that. But I don't know. Is that better or worse than the Australian teams pulling out? I don't know. I do know that it was better for those nations' coefficients. So I think we'll be seeing the tournament that I'm always talking about, by the way, AFC Cup. I think we're going to see A-League teams in that pretty soon. So for all of our Australian listeners, get to watching because it's a fun tournament. But anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about the top continental title. And Dan, since you are here from the beginning, we're going to do this in alphabetical order, which makes life easier for my brain, but not as far as our podcast rundown goes. But anyway, we're going to start with Group F, where Ulsan Hyundai, well, they did pretty well. They advanced doing okay. We'll talk about that. And also BG Pathum United got through as well on 12 points. But Dan, obviously we're going to start with you here. What went well for Ulsan?
Well, yeah, they won every game. That's what went well.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, they got maximum points, and they only conceded the one goal. So results-wise, I don't think it could have gone much better. The other great positive out of it, though, was that it had a feeling for Ulsan a little bit of pre-season. Strange to say, but we had so many players that are at the Olympic squad right now, and then we'd also welcome back 3 from Gimcheon, from the military team, and another player, Im Jong-un. He was doing his military service, but not with Gimcheon. He'd gone part-time and was with Pocheon in the K4. So getting those players integrated back in while still getting results was one of the real positives for Ulsan. We didn't go out there and really thrash any team. I think the most goals we scored was 3 in that first game against Vittel. You know, we left it to the last minute to get a 1-0 victory. So perhaps we could have scored a few more goals, been a bit more fluid, but I don't think that's what Hong Myung-bo was looking for. He was looking more for getting the squad together, not expending too much energy, get these players integrated back in, and, you know, winning all the games, you can't really fault anything, really.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of the emphasis is going to be on that integration and the players that were scoring a lot of the goals. At the back, however, Ulsan kept 5 clean sheets in this. Again, like you said, they only conceded once. That's as many as they had managed in their 15 previous ACL matches. So they are doing quite well defensively. And also on that note, they have not conceded more than a single goal in any of their last 16 ACL matches, and they are on a 15-match winning streak, which extends their own record. They set a record of 11 straight wins, and then they beat their own record, and they currently have it at 15 games, and you've got to hope that they're going to extend that. But again, we'll talk about that in a minute. Matthew, stay silent. We're coming to Jumbuk. But no, actually, Matthew, I will come to you for this one. Because we're going to talk about what didn't go well, and that's kind of for the group as a whole. Obviously, we have a focus on K-League teams here, but was there anything in this group that you didn't think went well overall for the group?
Well, I mean, the inclusion of Kaya, and I think you can't be too harsh on them because they came through the playoffs and beat Shanghai SIPG, Shanghai Port, yes, and I wasn't fully clued up on the new naming there, but yeah, Shanghai Port, which
it's basically what they were before.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. But yeah,
it was Shanghai International Port. Now they've just cut out a few steps.
Anyway, but yeah, they came through, and yes, they've got some group stage experience, but unfortunately, played 6, lost 6. Only found the net twice and conceded 16 in the process. It was a tough welcome to the competition for them. But, you know, they're all the better for it, hopefully. And we get to see teams like this play a bit more in the competition and start figuring it out, start coming in with more of a game plan in future editions. And, yeah.
Also got to see the fact that Carlisle Mitchell did indeed make a smart career move, because a couple of years ago he was playing for Seoul Eland in the 2nd division in Korea, and now he's playing in the biggest club competition in Asia. So well done to Carlisle Mitchell there. And actually, I thought he had a good tournament. Legitimately, I thought he did, which is
I was
odd thing to say about a
impressed.
defender, but
sorry, yeah, I was relatively impressed by Kaya. I thought there was a lot worse teams than them. They they never really got thrashed. Vittel beat them, I think it was 4 or 5, but other than that, they kept their shape, they kept going. I do like their manager as well, Australian fella. I can't remember his name now, but yeah, he was impressive.
I think they got very unlucky with their group draw, right? Had they gotten into one of the groups that had one of the youth teams, as it turned out, I think that could have been a bit more favorable for them, like it was for United City.
Well, they got through against Shanghai. I mean, that was true. Their one game, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. I think I would agree with the things that didn't go well there. Standout team. I mean, I think that it's got to be Ulsan here, right? This is the second time that they've won all 6 of their group matches. The first time was in 2012. So they're already off to a better start than they were last year when they won this thing. Is there any other team that we want to talk about? I mean, I thought BG did well.
BG, they were at home for a start.
Exactly.
So they would have wanted to go through. And I think they did think that they were better than the other 2 teams. And they got the results to prove it. Compared to some of the other more disappointing Thai teams, they got the job done. Maybe not as spectacularly as they would have liked, but yeah, they got through, and they get their big tie against Jeonbuk, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the domestic champions going head to head in that one. So I think that will be fun, and yeah, credit to them. You still got to get the job done, and Vittel. That defense was no joke, and that was one of the things that I wrote down for what didn't go well for Ulsan was that they really struggled, I think, in both matches. Obviously, it took until the 91st minute to score in their first match against Vittel, but then in the second one, it was scoreless at halftime. And I think maybe that's when fatigue factored in a little bit, but I thought Vittel put on a very good performance, can hold their head high. So BG getting some points off of them, I don't think is really anything to shake a stick at, as the very stupid saying goes. But anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about the standout player in this group and why it's Vako. Dan?
He did well, didn't he? 2 assists, 3 goals, and he got that highlight dribble that I said in the preview he was going to get. He had no right of get where he did in the box from the position that he was on the wing there. The defenders should really have done better, but yeah, he's direct. He's exciting. So yeah, I think he's one of those that also has benefited from this trip away. It feels like the team knows how to use him a bit better now.
Yeah, exactly.
So same with Hinterseer as well. I think he's gradually improving, gradually getting more and more used to Korean football. So yeah,
I think this was a good tournament timing-wise for Ulsan, because obviously I have Vako down as my standout player as well. He was involved in 5 goals, like you said. Only Oh Se-hoon was involved in as many goals, and Oh Se-hoon is basically a new addition. This was the first goal that he scored for Ulsan, and as you pointed out on Twitter, Dan, it's hard to believe he still fits the U23 rule, but he does, which is amazing for Ulsan, because I think those two, and if I had to pick, I'd say Vako, just because I think this is going to be the confidence booster that he needs to come back to the league and kick it up to another level. Obviously, we've seen him have some good performances in league play already, but I think that he has another gear, and I think he'll have found that now. And that's why I'm saying timing-wise, I think this is even better for Ulsan, because last year when they won the thing, Bjorn Janssen came out and had a tremendous tournament, and it was like, oh man, maybe this guy should have been playing all year, and it was too late for that. That's not the case now. Now Vako and Hinterseer can come back with that integration, with that confidence, and really help carry the team at a time, as you've also said, that they need them because of all the Olympic absences. So really good timing, and I'm really looking forward to seeing Vako get back into K-League and see what he can do there. Also, because the dude's actually on Twitter, so thank you for being on Twitter, sir, because it's very nice to be able to tag players when they score goals. So thank you for that one.
I just want to give a shout out for Kim Min-jun.
Yes.
He's the under 22 as well. So him and Oh Se-hoon, I think those two starting will give us 5 subs every game. But he has, with this tournament and this season in general, I think he's taken his place as a legitimate starter, not necessarily just that first half. I don't think he's going to come off after 20 minutes. I don't think he's going to come off at half time. I think he's nailed down a spot on the right wing. Red card aside, he had a great time out in Thailand.
Yeah. Well, what's a tournament without a red card? All right, and I think we've already answered the last bit of which is what's the team going to bring back to K-League. So we're going to take a really quick break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about Group G and Dan's favorite team, the Pohang Steelers. We'll be right back.
Fans, we want to hear from you. You're encouraged to email KLU at info@kleagueunited.com or tweet at KLeagueUnited with any questions, comments, or reactions. Or follow us on Facebook to ask directly during one of our live shows.
Welcome back to the K-League United podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Walters. I'm joined by a very silent Matthew Binns and Dan Croydon. Don't worry. Yep, no, I'm even cutting you off here. Sorry. We'll let Binns speak eventually. You know what, actually, Matthew, let's have you start this group, because I know you should love Pohang, because basically they're Jumbook's feeder club in so many ways. I mean, you guys just take whatever is good of theirs and try to make it your own. Let's talk about Group G, where Nagoya Grampus won the group, and that's what got them through. And Pohang Steelers got through on the 11 points that they earned in this group, which left Johor Darul Tazim, better known as JDT, and Ratchaburi out. And I'll talk about Ratchaburi in a second. But Matthew, what went well in this group for you?
I actually put Pohang getting through. I thought that was what went well. I did think Nagoya Grampus was the best team by far, as shown by the fact that they won the group and won it considerably. But Pohang getting through, I think when we did the recap podcast the last time with Dan and Muyol, we were talking, touched on the lack of Song Min Kyu. At that point, Pohang had won one and lost one and looked considerably the worst team against Nagoya. And
yes,
they battled through and they got the point they needed in that final game, and obviously had a helping hand from Jeonbuk in another group, but it was the most balanced group, as we've kind of already touched upon, and there's more to them than Song Min Kyu, and I think one of them is the former Ulsan player Shin Jin Ho. I think and I don't want to go too far into standout players, but he was one of their driving forces in central midfield, and he actually had the highest number of successful passes across all the group stages with 423, and just integral. And I think that would be what went well for Group G, just Pohang getting through.
Thanks for nicking my Shin Jin Ho stat before I get to
it.
No, I thought he was absolutely massive. But I mean, I think I agree that the Pohang getting through is what went well for them. I'll also touch on what didn't go well here, or the standout team rather for me. But it's their first round of 16 appearance since 2014. And in a lot of ways, to me, this is a really good statement of intent for this club as they're rebuilding, and as they came into this year getting rid of Ilyachenko and Palasevich. You thought, are they taking a step backwards right as they were getting ready to take a step forwards? And after this and getting into this knockout round and again, having that statement of intent to be in this tournament again, I think that's a really good thing for Pohang. So for me, that's what went well here. And obviously Mitchell Engerek's a beast in net for Nagoya, and that went well for them. But Dan, I assume you don't have too many nice things to say about Pohang. So let's go to what didn't go well in this group. What springs to mind first for you there?
I'm a little less high on Pohang, shall we say?
What? Shock.
So, but I think with a club of Pohang size, they're kind of reliant a lot on their foreign players, and what hasn't gone well for them. A couple of things that did go well was Tashi was their top scorer, their new foreigner. Striker. He had 1 in 15 in the league, but he got 3 during the ACL. So he got them a couple of really important goals as well. And then they've got Alex Grant coming back, the Australian defender. He got 6 appearances, so that's good. But Palacios, right? The podcast host. It's quite good, actually. You should give it a listen. But yeah, Palacios and the other guy, what's his name? Is it Kresic? I can't quite work out.
I'm just going to let you struggle through that one.
Yeah, the winger he got fouled for one of the penalties against JDT. So two big injuries there for foreign stars that Pohang tend to rely on. So we saw what happened when Palosevich and Ilyachenko left. It's taken some time for these guys to come in.
Yeah.
And two big injuries. It's not ideal at all. So coming back to the K-League, they're going to be a big miss, I think.
Yeah. I think that also the 3-0 loss that they suffered against Nagoya Grampus was their heaviest defeat to a Japanese side. So that's never going to be fun for a Korean team to do there. I thought what I was going to say didn't go well for them. I think did end up going kind of well by the end of it, like you were saying, Matthew, with their reliance on Sung Min Kyu, because you could see that they were kind of playing that same way in the second match, just kind of waiting for somebody to fill his role, and nobody did, nobody could. And then they finally switched that. So I thought that's what went well for them. But on the note of things that didn't go well, poor Ratchaburi, they are only the second team in the history of this tournament to fail to score a single goal in any of their first 6 ACL games. The first team happened last year, so it's a recent trend. But Ratchaburi, I didn't think they were, I don't know. It would have been a shock if they would have won a game, I'll say that. But I don't think they were don't score in any of your 6 games bad. I thought they had some fine moments, and obviously they held Pohang to a 0-0, which really looked like it could have doomed Pohang for a second there. That looked like somebody might have leapfrogged them. And honestly, had Kichi, a team we'll talk about shortly, had Kichi had a better goal difference, then they would have gotten past them. So, but that speaks to what you were talking about, Matthew, of, you got to go out and you got to score the goals, you got to do the things. So Pohang ended up doing that. But let's move on to the standout team, and I'll start here because I got thoughts in this group, and it's JDT for me for all of the wrong reasons. This is a team that had Safawi Rashid coming back from Portugal. This is a team that just keeps winning their league and looked ready to make that step, especially after what they did in 2020 last year before they weren't able to travel to the bubble. They were in really good shape in their group, and that was not an easy group. We saw what Suwon ended up doing in that tournament. We're seeing what Suwon's doing now. Suwon was a good team. They were also up against Vissel Kobe, and they played well in those games, and it looked like JDT was ready to make that leap. And if ever there was a group for them to make that leap in, it really looked like it was this one. I mean, I think everybody knew Nagoya was going to run away with this group just because of the defense that they have. It was going to be very difficult to break that down. But again, Ratchaburi didn't even score a goal. Pohang were good, but they weren't otherworldly. And for me, it feels like JDT, they've got a mental hurdle to get over, because in that first game, yes, it should have been a draw. Maybe if VAR was there, it would have been, but I'm glad it wasn't, because VAR is terrible and it ruins football. So that's fine. But I think that really affected them. And then to go out the next game and concede 3 penalties against Pohang, I think those first 2 matches just kind of put them over the edge, and they weren't able to come back from that. And I think that's a really big shame, because, again, this is a team that I feel needs to carry that torch for Southeast Asian football, and they just aren't right now. And that was a really big disappointment in this group for me. But I'll step down off of my soapbox real quick. And Matthew, I will remind listeners of the podcast that you're still here. Folks watching live can see you in all of your Jumbook kit glory. But what stood out in a not necessarily great way for you in this group?
Not in a great way, or not necessarily a great way. Because I was going to say, well,
oh, sorry, no, I'm on the negative side of things. Who was your standout team?
Hang on.
It has been a month since I've hosted this thing.
Well, there was an all right host in between.
He did all right.
A couple of them. Yeah.
I thought you were just talking about Paul.
Yeah, Paul did do a good job. Nagoya, I mean, I thought they were the standouts for obvious reasons. Just 5 wins on the bounce. Possibly should have had 6. Maybe arguably took the foot off the gas in the last one in their draw against Pohang. I mean, who's to say? But they went in. They nearly got a clean sweep of 6 victories, as Kawasaki Frontale did in the other group. So yeah, great result. Great result for J League in general, really.
Yeah, and that brings us to the standout player. And for me, you've already touched on the guy that I was going to bring up, which was Shin Jin-ho, a man that you're very familiar with, Dan, from captaining your side to the ACL title last year. And nobody created more chances for Pohang than the 14 that he created. Im Sang-hyup, interestingly enough, also had 14 chances created. But, I mean, he's just a boss in the midfield, and it looks like he's really grown into that system. And he's made the transition over, and you can see how integral he was to Ulsan's run last year, seeing him for another team and seeing him lift them to that status. I thought he was just fantastic. Was there any player other than Shin Jin-ho that you thought was a standout in this group, Dan?
Well, no, I can't look past him. He was fantastic, of course, and he slotted straight back in at Pohang. He just showed that he's got the class to run a midfield. Certainly making chances wasn't Pohang's problem. It was taking them.
Yes,
that game against Ratchaburi, how they didn't score in that game was ridiculous. So yeah, I think standout player Shin Jin-ho. I bet he wishes he still had Junior or maybe an Ilyachenko in front of him.
Well, yeah, Ilyachenko could or should have been there. I mean, that was one of the things I wrote down for this group. Could you imagine if Pohang still had Ilyachenko and Pelasevich on their team? It would have been glorious. But that leads into what I think they can take back to K-League, which is hopefully the form of Boris Tashi. It's 3 goals, 82% passing accuracy, had a couple of touches in the box per match. He was only called offside twice the whole time, so he's playing intelligently. And he also had a handful of interceptions while he was over there as well. So a good tournament for him. And like we were saying with Vako earlier, I think it does take players time to settle in, and hopefully this tournament can be that springboard for him. But was there anything else for Pohang for you guys before we move on to the 2-time domestic champions? All right, let's move on.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, let's talk about Group H, where only one team made it out of this group, and that one team was the inevitable. It was Thanos. It was Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors making their way through. And Matthew, what went well for them in this group?
What went well for Jeonbuk or what went well for the group? Because I wouldn't actually say they're the same thing. I think Jeonbuk obviously did do very well in this group, but I think what went well for Group H is actually Chiang Rai United. I think they came into this tournament as playoff contenders, and they were bumped up due to the withdrawal of Sydney FC. And, with the A-League heavyweights, they may well have changed the final complexion of this group. Were they in it? But they weren't. And Thai FA Cup winners, they made the most of their opportunity. They finished third, but they earned 2 wins against Tampines Rovers. They got 2 hard-fought draws against Gamba Osaka, and they lost twice to Jeonbuk. But I think that was a good showing from a team that was possibly going to have a difficult playoff contention. So yeah, found them there surprisingly, but they fought well, and their games against Jeonbuk as well were quite closely contested. They put in a good showing against them. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of Chiang Rai United if they can qualify for the next edition of this competition.
That's 2 in a row that they've done quite well. Obviously, they beat FC Seoul last year in this edition, or in that edition of the tournament. And I'll say it again, they do have one of the best nicknames, the Beatles. They have a massive war beetle. It's a beetle carrying a war flag into war. That's their crest. It's amazing. They deserve to win games for that alone. So yeah, I agree. I thought it was a good showing from them. Quick fun fact in this group for you, Matthew. That was Jeonbuk's first win over Gamba Osaka since 2006. They had played each other 4 times since then. And Jeonbuk didn't manage to get a win until that last game when they did. And that is what went well for me in this one, is that Jeonbuk eliminated a J-League team. Because had they got the draw, might have been enough maybe, but nope, no thank you. None of that.
Revenge for 2015, where Gamba Osaka cruelly scored in the last minute to knock them out of the quarterfinals, with Jeonbuk just about to go through on away goals. So yeah, it's come back round for Jeonbuk on that front. But yeah, so it did go well for Jeonbuk in that sense. I think there were questions about Jeonbuk's form coming into this competition. I actually doubted how well they'd perform in this competition. I thought Chiang Rai would cause them problems, which they did to a degree, but not in terms of results. And yeah, they just dropped 2 points at the whole group stages. and that was against Gamba Osaka, of course. But yeah, it's allowed. I think it's worked well for Jeonbuk. This similar way that Dan said that for Ulsan, it's kind of had an element of preseason friendliness to it. For Ulsan, for Jeonbuk, it's allowed their players to refine their goal scoring touch. I think, there's players that have been anonymous all season. Gustavo, one of my standout players, not my standout player, but definitely one of them. And he's 7 goals. He's currently leading the eastern side of this competition. He's actually only 2 goals off. He's 2 goals off the lead, which is by Michael Olunga of Al Duhail, but they're actually out of the competition now. So he's got a good chance to catch him up as well. So yeah, I think
just on that, 7 goals. That's what Junior got last year. That's what the amount of goals that got you the golden boot. So he's already there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he did benefit from facing Tampines Rovers, who I think we're probably going to talk about. Didn't go well in this group, but yeah, Tampines Rovers, Jeonbuk scored considerably against them.
Yeah, let's move on to what didn't go well. Dan, why is the answer Tampines Rovers?
Well, yeah, if Kaya, represented their country well, Tampines, well, I mean, the results speak for themselves. There's not much more you can say about it. Apart from they did bounce back the game after. I can't precisely remember the score, but yeah, the first one they lost 9-0, was it, against Jeonbuk?
Yeah, first one 9-0.
And the second one they did marginally better. They didn't throw in the towel completely. But yeah, not good at all.
Yeah. I mean, again, tough going up against the reigning champions of K-League there, but would have expected a little bit more from them. Not necessarily as much as I was expecting from JDT, obviously, but I guess I'll give them a mulligan, but I thought that's definitely what didn't go well in this group. I mean, obviously what didn't go well for Gamba Osaka was getting out of the group. I thought they looked okay. But then again, I don't know where they are with their league right now. It's fine. So the standout team, Matthew, I'll bring you back because I'll let you talk about Jeonbuk. Go ahead, go on.
Well, yeah, I mean, it is Jeonbuk. I mean, either Jeonbuk played really well, or there's a case now that Yangju Citizen could probably compete in this competition. But yeah,
get them in there.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it. I hope they do well in the FA Cup. I think, Jeonbuk were coming into this competition really on a poor run of form. They did beat Songnam with the hefty scoreline just before coming in, and Gustavo got 4 in that match. So he just found his scoring touch just before coming into this competition. His confidence definitely would have been built by scoring so many in this. But actually, I think my player, Gustavo, is up there, but Modu Barrow, I think he had he was key to Jeonbuk's attacks. He scored 6 goals himself and got an assist. And he's going to be heavily relied upon coming into the latter half of the season. So it's good to see him getting in on the goals.
Yeah, the AFC ranking coefficiency, I can't remember how that one's done, but they've got him at the top for the East as the most influential player in the eastern portion, Mo Barrow. I thought that one was a little bit harsh on Gustavo. They had like a top 10 player ranking, and the dude that's been involved in 10 goals, which is more than anybody else in the entire tournament, didn't make the top 10 as being influential. So I'm pretty sure those are done by Opta. So maybe sometimes, I don't know. Game's about scoring goals. Pretty important. Gustavo was the takeaway player for me. 7 goals, like you were saying, Dan, that's as many as Junior had all of last year. And if Jeonbuk can make a deep run in this, we could be looking at him potentially getting up there with what we've seen from Adriano in the past, from a K-League player getting up and tying the single season record of 13. Halfway to beating it. Go on and hope that you play Tampines Rovers again and get 4 goals in a single match again. But yeah, I think there were a couple of standout players there, and I think it should also be noted that we've talked about Ibam Young before, but I thought he did well stepping in. Not a surprise, really, but good for him to get those minutes, and good for Jeonbuk to know that they do have a solid backup choice in net. And can bring that back to the league play, because obviously the Olympics are still happening. So he's going to have to remain between the sticks for a little while for Jeonbuk. So that was also a really big positive for them. That's what they can take back to K-League for me. Matthew, I'll let you get the last word here on what they can take back into the league, and then we'll take a quick break.
Yeah, I think obviously getting back to winning ways is massive. I think they're going to come back to the rekindling the scoring form of your stars, of your second striker. Certainly helps to put pressure on Ilyachenko, and hopefully Ilyachenko can start finding the goal again, because he was drying up a little bit in the K-League. He did get a few in this tournament, must be said, but he was drying up a little bit in the K-League coming into this competition. There was too much pressure on him to deliver. I think as we go back to the K-League, Jeonbuk have found this winning form, but they've also got players reinforcing them when they come back. Sasalak, Kim Jin-soo and Min Sung-min are waiting for them at the clubhouse, ready for the K-League to restart. But I think the most important thing is there were under 22 players that did play here. They didn't have to play under 22 players. Well, kind of had to, because they didn't have a left back for most of it. But Chae Hee-won, Park Jin-sung, they both played regularly, got a decent amount of minutes against decent opposition. And it just shows Kim Sang-sik that he is going to have to play these players because of the under-22 quota, and they're not going to absolutely make the team fall apart. I think there's, he's been taking them off for 20 minutes so often this season. Just let them play a bit longer. You look at Ulsan, all the good work they're doing with these players and trusting them, letting them play. And these players aren't bad. Just let them play. They're not going to make it worse.
Yeah,
is what I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully that's something we will see when they resume league play next week. We are 1 week away from K-League 1 resuming, and this summer, it's a blessing and a curse. The schedule's relentless. But speaking of the schedule being relentless, we've got one more group to talk about, but we will be right back after a quick break.
FNR is a revolutionary football-dedicated digital platform, the first of its kind in Australia. It provides a 24/7 live online radio platform experience, podcast hub, and acts as a content provider for TV, radio, and digital. Having reached millions of listeners and football fans since launching, FNR is accessible worldwide via its website or app, providing a platform to discuss, debate, and celebrate the world game. We are your voice of football, FNR Football Nation Radio.
Welcome back to the K-League United podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Walters, joined by Dan Croydon and Matthew Binns. And gentlemen, we've saved the best for last. We've saved the Sky Blues. We were going to talk about... We're just going in alphabetical order here, but everybody loves Daegu. Everybody loves Daegu. They did not win their group, however. They did not win Group I. That was, surprise, surprise, Kawasaki Frontale won this group because they win everything in front of them, basically. But Daegu did get enough points, and especially they needed to win in their last match against United City, and they very comfortably did so. I think that was one of the key takeaways for me for Daegu, is that they saw that pressure and they stood up to it and they did well. And they beat out United City, as mentioned, and a very different looking Beijing FC side. It's one of the few teams that still got their corporate name, but they're Beijing FC in this tournament, just so everybody knows what's going on there. Anyway, let's move on to what went well here. And Daegu, they made a lot of history here. They got their biggest ever win in the competition with a 7-0 victory over United City on match day 2. They also scored in 6 consecutive matches for the first time, averaging 3.6 goals per game after failing to score in 3 of their 6 matches prior to this. So if that wasn't good enough, they also managed to get 4 clean sheets in the last 5 games after managing only 1 clean sheet in 7 games before that. So long story short on all those stats, it was a much better ACL this year for Daegu than it has been in the past. It was United City's first time in this tournament. I think they might have expected a little bit more. I think they would have expected to keep these games a little bit closer than they did. And obviously, as we've talked about before, Beijing, this is not the Beijing Beijing FC that we know from previous editions. But Daegu can only play who's in front of them, and I thought they did. I thought they did really well, especially considering the fact that, yes, they lost to Frontale, but especially that first match, they had the lead at one point. They ended up losing 3-2, but Daegu, I think they showed really, really well in this tournament. And I mean, obviously I'm a little bit biased, but they were the standout team for me, jumping way ahead on that. Just because Frontale did what was expected of them, whereas I think Daegu went a little bit above. But that's my take on it. Matthew, you had to stay quiet for a couple of groups here. What went well for you in this group?
And I've kind of gone for Daegu because, to be honest, I don't think, looking at how the contrast between the top two and the bottom two in this group, I can't really say the competitiveness of this group. But I think Daegu, yeah, as you said, they've competed well. They have a smaller squad usually than most K-League teams. They rely a lot on youth, but they've also had 3 of their key players that have gone to the Olympics. And there was a bit of concern whether the players that came in would be able to step in and fit in seamlessly, and they have done. And yeah, they're through. Then so we're going to go with Daegu's competitiveness.
Makes sense for me. Dan, unless you got anything to add on the positive takeaways, let's go with what didn't go well in this group, and we'll have you get that started.
Well, yeah, I'll go back to the games with Kawasaki for the negative. As you say, they had the lead. They, in fact, had the lead twice in that first game. They had a 1-0 and 2-1 lead. Of course, it's hard to go against a team that hasn't been beaten since, I don't know, probably 2 years ago or something ridiculous. They're on the most ridiculous run. But yeah, to have the lead twice and not take a point, I think that's the one negative, perhaps. Yeah. Especially a team that is usually quite solid. Daegu get a lot of praise for their attacking football with Cezinha and Edgar, but actually in the K-League, their defense very rarely lets in 2 or 3 goals as they did against Kawasaki. So I think they'll be a little bit disappointed that they didn't take something away from those 2 games.
Yeah, I think that's fair. One of the other things that did not go well in this group that I'll touch on before we move on to the standout team, which I think we've already all said is Daegu, so we'll actually skip that. We'll move on to the standout player. But one thing that didn't go well was Beijing's tournament in general. They failed to win a single game for just the second time in their history. They also did that in 2012. And the 3 goals that they managed is the fewest for that team ever in this tournament. So, again, I don't know what you expect when you're sending the kids, but that's in the history books now. It's in there. So
yeah, this is the problem for these Chinese teams. They've got the caveat, but it is their team. It's the team that they sent, and the history books will show that they got thrashed 7-0. So yeah, It's not a good look.
Yeah, and in a few years' time, everybody will remember, but it'll still be fun to talk about. Anyway, I think we all agreed that Daegu was the standout team for us. I think obviously Kawasaki Frontale is just ridiculous. They're just ridiculous. Yeah. They scored 27 goals. 27 goals in 6 games.
Well, yes,
that's absurd.
Ulsan have this 15-game unbeaten run, and we'll see if we can make it 16. The one thing I'm getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but Ulsan have played Kawasaki in 2018 and 19 in the group stage, and they didn't go through. The Kawasaki didn't go through. They were third both those times. Ulsan haven't lost. I think, 4 games, Ulsan 2 wins, 2 draws. So recent history is on our side, but obviously Kawasaki they've stepped it up a notch the last 2 years, shall we say.
They're okay. They might be good at this whole football thing. And I think that leads us on to the standout player. And Matthew, why don't you get us started?
For the group, I could lazily say Leandro Di Maio of Kawasaki Frontale because he got the most goals.
Sure did.
I think you could point also to Yasuto Wakizak. Apologies if I've said that wrong, but he should get a nod. He created the most chances across the group, and obviously the most for Kawasaki. And when they're scoring 27 goals, he must be doing something right. So, I think either one of those 2.
Yeah, Dan?
Edgar, I believe he also got 7 or 6 goals.
He got 5 goals I got him down for, but
okay. But he did pretty well for, considering that he's come back this season from a big injury. He's going to be, if Daegu are going to do anything in the league, he's going to be big this second half of the season.
That was exactly what I wrote down for him. I think him being at full health and just being that hold-up option that they need that they really, really need. And we saw how different it was before he was there. Since he's been back, they haven't been beaten in K-League. And the only 2 games that they've lost, I think it's in 17 matches, the only 2 games they've lost are to a team that hasn't lost in memory. They've lost twice, and it was both times against Kawasaki Frontale. And I think the last time they lost a match was before COVID. So, which feels like 25 years ago. So that's about how long it's been since Frontale lost a game. Back to the standout players, though, I think Sasina deserves a shout. He had 4 goals and an assist. But Park Byung-hyun was a player for Daegu that attempted more passes, had more touches, and also attempted and won more tackles than anybody else on Daegu's squad. So a player that's maybe not a household name in league play, had a really good tournament, and I think he'll be looking to make that step into K-League when they come back. Matthew, it looked like you had one other thing.
No, I was just going to quickly add to Ed, the way you were saying he held up play, and that he actually was joint 4th for duels in the competition as well.
Nice.
He's got 37 duels and successful with them. So
yeah, and that all leads into what I think they could take back to K-League, which is confidence. Because again, like I said, they've won 13 of 17 matches in all competitions, which includes the FA Cup. And as Matthew said, you never know how it's going to go against Yeongju Citizen or any other team in the FA Cup. So that ain't nothing. And they also did really well in ACL. So, I mean, I think this is a team that is absolutely on a high. They were going into this tournament, and they've come out of it, I think, even higher than they were before. So, title race, man. Why not? Why not? Because they are in a 3-way tie for second place with Jeonbuk and Suwon Samsung Blue Wings right now. All of them are only 4 points off of Ulsan. Let's do this thing. It's like K-League 2 is in the first division finally.
I did see, though, that they got one positive result that is a bit of a negative. So coming back to, what are they bringing back? Yeah, they're bringing back a positive COVID case. So I think they'll probably be sitting out a couple of rounds, unfortunately.
Yeah, it just keeps rearing its ugly head. But, well, obviously we wish all the best to everybody at Daegu and Songnam, another team that has had a positive case recently. So we continue to deal with the times that are right now, and obviously we hope everybody recovers first and foremost. But speaking of recovering, we're going to take a really quick break. How's that for a transition? We're going to
I brought you down a bit there, didn't I? We were ending on a positive note.
It's like, oh man, they're doing it. They're going to come back in the league and kill it. Yeah. Oh, speaking of death. Anyway, how's that for a dark transition? Let's take a break, and we'll be back for the mailbag.
Eulji Lewis is your neighborhood British bar and cafe located in the Old district of Seoul. Decorated in old English antiques and furniture for a true homely feel, you can enjoy homemade scones, cakes and afternoon tea during the day, and traditional British favorites like beef stew, English ale, and a fine selection of wines at night. Available for private parties or simply an evening out, Eulji Lewis is sure to become your favorite neighborhood pub. Be sure to mention K-League United at the bar during your visit, and you'll get 10% off your bill.
Welcome back to the K-League United podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Walters, and I'm joined by Dan Croydon, and hosting us, hopping into the Eulji Lewis Mailbag, where there's beef stew. I love the way Michael says that in that ad, beef stew. Anyway, Matthew Binns, get us going.
Okay,
I'm off the rails.
We have a question in from Mike Baston on Twitter. He is asking, after his return to Daegu, first team and some solid ACL performances, what are Jo Janu's chances of retaining the starting spot when returning to K-League action?
Well, I had a different answer before Dan brought us all down, but brought up a very good point that I think Daegu's going to be sitting for a while. I was going to say, with all the absences that they have and needing some squad rotation to deal with this much match fatigue, I thought he did have a pretty good chance of getting in there, but looks like they're going to be on a break. So,
Yeah, I think I'd probably say the same now. Yeah, with the Olympics, there is an opportunity for those players to continue playing, but it depends when they get back into action.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's a very short mailbag this week.
Oh, there were a couple more that came in. They're not in your rundown.
Oh, then could you just dip into the mailbag for me?
Allow me, if you could scooch over there, please, sir. I'll take this one came in our Insta DMs today from someone named Joseph, and they are asking. Dan, I'll point this one to you because we've buried this one for long enough. Let's talk about it outright. What do you think of the AFC's rule that teams from the same country can't face each other in the knockout rounds? And I'm pointing this one to you because Ulsan and Kawasaki Frontale are about to face each other. That is part of this because as great as it is for K-League to have 4 teams getting through, there are only 4 matches. So that means they ain't going to face each other. And somehow we've ended up with that.
So they can't play each other in the round of 16. They can face each other after that. Correct.
As we've seen before with like Suwon and Ulsan, Jeonbuk and Suwon and so on and so on.
I was going to say, I'm sure that Ulsan played Suwon in the 16 a couple of years ago, so it must be a recent thing.
I think you're
2018, yeah.
Yeah, straight out the groups, I think we were together.
Yep.
So,
yep.
Okay, so that's one of the reasons for it. Okay, yeah, that's I can understand it. But why then those two, that particular Japanese team, I'm not sure, Nagoya or, give us one of the second places for being the best first place team. So, yeah, I guess the thing is that we're going to have to face a good team at some point. So, just like with England in the Euros, get that game against Germany, get it over and done with earlier, and then you get that run. So I'm positive enough about it. I don't think they hold much fear for us. But yeah, I think it's a strange one for sure. I think they'll be disappointed as well, coming up against the reigning champions when they've won so many games. It doesn't make sense to Frontale fans either.
Yeah, and Matthew, I'll ask you this question as well. Like, what do you think of this rule that teams from the same nation can't play each other? I mean, usually we don't have half of the remaining teams in the East coming from the same league. But do you think that's a rule that should be scrapped, or is that something that you kind of like when we get back to teams potentially traveling? I mean, it's especially odd this year because they're going back to a bubble for the knockout rounds as well. So,
I've never really been a fan of this rule. They're already divided for the groups. Why do we need to keep them apart for so long? I guess it's obviously to keep as many countries interested as possible from a commercial perspective. But I don't know. This ties back into the fact that I'm not a big fan of this second-ranked team thing. I still think it should be first, second across the knockouts as it has been in previous editions. But yeah, I can see why it's done. I just think it should all... I just think clubs should be allowed to face each other, basically.
There you go. All right, let's move on. We got one last one here, and this is from Sungmin via email. That's still a thing, by the way, folks. Some people still use email. info@kleagueunited.com if you want to get at us on there. Or just on our website, which is where this one came in from. He is asking, which K-League team has the best chance of winning the whole thing, and why is it Daegu, Dan? No, he didn't say why is it Daegu. He just said who has the best chance of winning the whole thing.
Well, I'll let Matt take this one just because I think it's got to be Jeonbuk with just because they have BG in the next round, and who knows after that. But yeah, I think after a couple of years of disappointment, I think they've got the attack to go far, and I think they've got the draw of the next round, so I've got to go for them. I would like to back Ulsan, but we've got such a tricky tie. If we get past Kawasaki, I think we've got a very good chance of going back to back, but it's just that uncertainty the next round.
Yeah, actually, that's nearly word for word what I was going to say, and I think it's purely just because of Ulsan's fixture. I think if they verse even if they verse Kawasaki later, Kawasaki could lose form in the J League. They could falter or hit a blip, and then it's anybody's game. They've got it, but having to face Kawasaki so soon, I don't think it's fair that they should be facing them. I think prior to the knockouts, based on the group stage, I'd say both of those are the favourites, Ulsan and Kawasaki, and we're one of them out. It does open it up for Jeonbuk. I think. Yeah, it could be a reverse of last year. Jeonbuk could end up taking the Champions League, but Ulsan, if they go out of the competition early, then I think that's the K-League sorted for them. But we'll see. If Ulsan stay in it, then there's hope for Jeonbuk in the K-League. I don't know which one I want.
Look, if we've got
just having a choice, I shouldn't really be that.
If we've got Korean teams winning it back to back, I'm just a happy camper no matter what. And Jung Mi-yeol was going to be with us this week, but he had a meeting that he's just now getting out of. So he's watching on Facebook right now and saying it could be Daegu. And it could be Daegu. To fill in the rest of the matchups there, we have talked about Ulsan and Kawasaki playing each other. Jeonbuk will face BG Pathum United. Daegu, they've got the very unenviable task of trying to breach the defensive wall that is Nagoya Grampus. And then Pohang Steelers were facing Cerezo Osaka. And I got to say, after watching Cerezo and their group, I like Pohang's chances in that one, to be entirely honest, especially if they can have Sung Min Kyu with them for that one, which you would expect that they can, and you would expect that they would be able to find form in the league. I mean, yeah, I think K-League teams are doing all right here. I think they got a pretty good chance of advancing. Wouldn't it be delightful if all four of them advanced? And then we could just brag about it for another year, because I'm never done with the bragging rights of K-League teams and how well they do in ACL. So
Adam Taggart might have something to say about that at Cerezo. He might be out of quarantine just in time to break some Pohang hearts. And I'll be crying along with everyone else, I'm sure.
Yes, I'm sure you will be. All right, that's it for the mailbag this week. But before we get out of here, and because we've got Dan here, we do have some exciting things coming up on Patreon soon. K-League Survivor is due back next week. Dan, it's been 10 years since we've done this. Can you remind people what that is?
Sure. Is it back next week? Blimey.
Oh, yeah, the league's back.
Yeah. So basically, when every team is playing in K1 and K2, you have a choice of who you think will not lose their game that week. Simple as that. Who won't lose? There are, I think there's 5 or 6 people left. I know that Michael Redmond is still on 3 lives, leading the way. And there's a few people teetering on their last life. But yeah, K-League Survivor. If we might start it again for the second half if things don't go well.
Yeah, we had to suspend it because Songnam and FC Seoul were out, and now we've got Songnam and Daegu out. But you know what? I think these are the times we live in. I think we're going to have to just make the executive decision to bring Survivor back. We're going to have to bring it back. Or maybe we restart the whole thing and we just give Michael a belt, which is what he's wanted all along. But anyway, that's going on over on Patreon. That'll be back next week. Also back next week are our usual So Rare features where our K2 champions can get injury news, suspensions, transfer rumors, which are very relevant right now, and much, much more going on over there. And the K1 champions can also get the predicted starting lineups for each week. So all that's going on over on patreon.com/Kaylee United. And as always, if you'd like to listen to this podcast live, you can do so on Football Nation Radio down in Australia, where they're not talking about ACL, unfortunately, because their teams weren't in it. But if you subscribe and leave us a review, you'll be entered into this month's K-League kit contest, which you're just running out of time to get that lovely pink Gwangju FC goalkeeper kit. I figured for summer, you got to go full Mingo. You got to get that thing out, and you got to go for that thing. But anyway, a little bit more time there. But that is about it for this week. So for Dan Croydon and Matthew Binns, I'm Ryan Walters. Thanks so much for watching.
정주성 공공 폭격기